Hey everyone, welcome back to our podcast. This is a retrospective look across the autism spectrum. Me, Kelly Birmingham, going over my 25 plus, actually 27-year career, talking about ABA and autism. And as always, I am with my partner in crime, Jen Lucero, mom to Dylan and Ethan. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kelly. Good morning. Or
Good morning.
afternoon.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the state of the world, right? The great resignation happened. We all heard it. I remember when I was in it and everyone was quitting. You know, I run an ABA company working with children and families. And I remember thinking, is this only happening to me? And then I started reading that it was happening everywhere, right? And then it's sort of the state of being, if you will, sort of like the state of the union was that everyone was quitting. Then for us, COVID came back large, really hard and strong. January, December, January, even February. It was like COVID was really crazy for us here in California. Then things kind of seemed to settle down in March and everyone's like, COVID's over, right? Everyone's like, COVID's over, things are fine. In general, we had consistent work with our children and families, providing ABA therapy in their homes. March was pretty consistent and it was so helpful and hopeful. And now April hits, and I don't know, but you and I are suddenly feeling like people are quitting again. People are walking off the jobs. People are no-showing for things. Our family friends are saying, wait, our therapists are leaving and they're not saying goodbye. And to me, it feels, I don't know if it's because we've been through so much, but it feels worse to me right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the same thing. I think for me with Dylan, like just in general, like I feel like things always come in waves. And like you said, when it does feel worse, sometimes when it's happening consistently, like you're used to it, but when things start getting good again and then you get hit with something major, like, you know, one of your longtime service providers leaving, and like you said, with like no communication, it's almost harder to take, and adjust to. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like Dylan's actually starting to cope and take things better and take change better than I am,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. So, I mean, as families, it's especially now, it's rough,
I have vivid memories of telling you one time, years and years ago, that when Dylan had a sort of a big meltdown, it felt worse to you because it hadn't happened in a long time. I vividly remember you saying that to you. And now it's interesting that you just brought up that that's something interesting that Dylan is learning, like something good that's coming out of this, if there's any good, is Dylan is having to learn how to cope with the constant change. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, because part of it, the good news too is I think I just finally found a adult day program, though they're not open yet.
Right.
They're still doing remote, and so they said, we can put them on a wait list, but would you be open to remote learning? And like, if you would have asked me that like 2 years ago, I'd be like, no way. But then I'm like, okay, this might be a good stepping stone instead of throwing him in a new place like cold turkey, in person. And that he proved for actually quite a long time that he could do remote learning pretty successfully, on the computer and stuff, like when COVID really first hit. But yeah, for Dylan, for example, we just lost a really great guy that was working with him for the past 3 years. And, he was working with him like 3 days a week, and it was usually consistent. And then I found out he was leaving his company, and they ended up telling me, but he told me, because he was concerned and worried, and, And so we prepped Dylan for it and kept telling him. And in the past, like he would obsess about it, even when it was over. He really liked the guy. But this time, it was the first time I think where he just didn't even ask. Like I expected, like,
Wow.
okay, the day he's supposed to show up, you're just like,
Yeah.
but so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it makes me sad because I feel like Dylan has lost so much. Not only just service providers, but we've had a lot of, things with the family and stuff. And, we've had a lot of loss, like, either just deaths or just like losing people. And then, obviously finishing a transition program, but not having, something in place. Like there's just been a lot to deal with. And so I've seen this a lot with families that we know and friends. And so I have a great concern for people because I know that how it affects everybody, including the whole family. Like, especially if you have someone that is trustworthy that your kid gels with and you've had them around, especially if it's in your home, or it's someone that your kid's out comfortably in the community and being able to do things, and to lose that person, it feels like, honestly, it feels like a loss of like a family member or something. And I think it's BS because I think a lot of these companies, and I'm not saying like, I'm saying mainly, I see a lot with the school system too, but or some, service providers where like the higher ups are like, do not tell anybody.
Right.
When that's like the worst thing you can do.
Right.
Like, I mean, if you know your clients and you know what the goals are, and like, aren't you then setting up the individual and all the caregivers up for the kill? Like by
Yeah.
just trying to be like silent about it. I don't
No,
know. Right?
I agree with you. Um, I'm kind of looking at, there's like a few different points. And one is, if you know the person is leaving, we did a podcast on this, like how to
Mhm.
transition
Mhm.
successfully and to tell everyone and include everyone and let people have closure and say goodbye, right? That's what I think. You and I both agree that that is the appropriate way to do it, that everyone gets to have closure and say goodbye. What I'm seeing, and for the few listeners that we have, they're going to hear me being really vulnerable in that, as a leader, I've always prided myself in retention.
Yeah.
When I had my practice, I had the
Oh
same
yeah.
people. They were with me the whole time. I always had
Oh
that
yeah.
one person that rotated having babies. But
Mhm.
my core people stayed with me for years. Oh, from the very beginning, right? And I was a small group, obviously, but I have prided myself in being a kind, fair
Mhm.
leader that won't ask anyone to do anything that I'm not willing to do, right? But I'm seeing therapists now, they're just walking off the job, and it's almost always, when you talk to them, not related to the work. It's their personal life. Like, I had 7 people lose their father in last month. Like, that's big stuff.
Yeah.
And
That's
our
true.
field tends to employ younger people, newer in their career. Many are also in school, so they're trying to balance school and home. Many may live with their family still, and so they may not always have to work yet at this point. But I can't, they just leave. And so there's no goodbye.
Mhm.
And I don't know what to do with that. I want to know your perspective from a family member, right? So
Mhm.
if we have therapists that are just not, like, someone's grandmother died the other day, they said, I'm too overwhelmed and stressed with life, I'm resigning effective immediately.
Mhm.
We are obviously trying to reach out and say, don't go, take time
Mhm.
off. We want you
Mhm.
to have the time you need, but don't leave. You can come back when you've healed.
Mhm.
And we're just not hearing back from that person.
Mhm.
What can I be doing for my families to protect, like, to help them learn how to cope with that?
Mhm.
I'm certainly assuming I'm not the only one who's experiencing this, my
Yeah.
organization.
I would say like as soon as whether or not there is going to be a time frame that usually in the perfect world, there's a 2-week notice, I would say, like, I don't understand why it's a secret because I experience this all the time. But I would say for anyone that's a supervisor or a leader, like, then it's the best interest of everybody involved, including your company, but certainly the families and that transition. Because if you're going to eventually bring somebody else in, like, if there's no overlap or the kid doesn't know or the family's not going what's going on, then you're setting yourself up for the kill. That certainly that individual most likely is gonna, have issues with it and be confused. They probably will act out. Um, they'll
Yeah.
probably act out on the new person,
Yep.
especially if they have had someone with them for a period of time. So I think always, whether even though it sucks, like, to hear, I think immediate, like as soon as and a response and contacting the family directly, if possible by phone, or at least, email or text, and let them know the situation so they can process it, digest it, and then come up with, even if you don't have an answer, just like listen to them and then tell them that you're going to do that you understand how this is going to affect the individual being served and them, and that you will do your best to come up with a solution. Honestly, it's kind of like, when, like, what I do for a living, like when I do fundraising, it's thank yous. I don't think people expect, the world or much. Like, it's just, a level, frankly, it's a level of respect to
Yeah.
the individual that you're serving and to the family, because nothing's worse than just, having the Band-Aid ripped off and like having no warning,
Yeah. That's a really good point. We know a couple of our good friends lost their longtime therapist and
Mhm.
were not told, and there was
Yeah.
no goodbye. On the flip side, there are times when I have had to terminate people
Yeah.
for inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
Not often, but a few times. And then I can't tell the families why. That actually has happened to me. And I can't tell the families why the therapist was not
Yeah.
allowed to say goodbye.
Mhm.
And the reason the therapist was terminated may not have anything to do with their child. So that part feels hard too.
Yeah, and I've seen that before too, where I get like, I know it's nothing to do with me or us or, yeah. Well, again, I don't think it's a thing of saying why or, how or, um, because in the end, if this, I probably shouldn't say this, but, in the end, if someone is in your kid's life and they have been for years, and
Long time marketing.
okay, when I'm done with this, I'll make it for you, okay?
Hey, Dylan.
Let me finish this, all right? So, in the end, if there is change coming up or anything, I think it's just good to know. And then if you are close, most likely you're probably going to still remain in that person's life. I mean, we've had people we've known since Dylan's 4 years old that have, worked with them in the past, and now they're like family, But there's some people too, frankly. I mean, I've been pretty lucky, but there's some people that you kind of just go with the flow and hang on with. But sometimes when they do leave, you're like, all right, like, it's not the worst thing in the world, you know what I mean? But I think it's just knowing what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean,
And if I can be frank,
mhm.
just from what I'm seeing, because I've been doing a lot of research now, I think it sucks that it seems like if your child is in school age, and that's anywhere from, pre-K through transition to the time they're 22, there seems like, there's services available, people are available, And I think, they get paid a lot better through the school districts, for example. And then I'm finding that once your child is an adult and all these adult programs and other services, that they, like, I've been asking around and looking and doing my research, and they expect to have people take on these positions like job coaches and, working at different facilities and all this stuff, or like behavior respite and things like that. And they want to pay these people minimum wage and then give them like, and just under enough hours to receive benefits and stuff. And frankly, like when I drive by, I see like McDonald's starting wage is like $17 to $19 an hour. And then I think, who is gonna like even take on, or how do you expect to retain staff that are gonna want to work with, it's a tough job. I acknowledge it. I do it. I do it personally. I've done it professionally. And you're dealing with behaviors, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. There's a lot put on you. So I think, like you're saying, there's so much going on in everybody's lives right now that, like, does it make it worth it? And does it make it worth it that, like, my younger son, who is like in college, like you said, a lot of these kids are pursuing usually something in, the field, right? But like if my son Ethan could make more, like with a wage plus, tips, let's say at Veggie Grill, than
Right.
someone that's a job coach or a behavior interventionist, like how do you expect that people are gonna stick through it, right?
It's true. I went to a conference this week. It was, I'll plug it because it was a great conference. It was Autism Investment Summit.
Mhm.
It was sponsored by the Behavioral BHOCE. They're a for-profit accreditation program. The conference was fantastic. I was on a panel speaking about how we measure clinical quality, which I enjoyed. I also very much enjoyed that I got to go to a workshop done by their statistician, and he provided this incredible data that they collect from all their organizations. And basically they talked about what they saw as the reason for high turnover, and compensation was important for sure, to your point, right? And this is, this conference was for companies owned by private equity. And there's no question that the margin of profit is huge for a lot of these companies on the backbone of our behavioral therapist workers, right? And I'm thankful that I work for an organization that is looking at that and understanding that. I can pay decently, although not as much as other companies, and we're still working on that. But the other thing they talked about was actually companies providing support for mental health and support for professional growth and relationship building. And when I listened to that, I thought COVID has ruined that, right?
Yeah,
we are still, when we hire people, doing it remotely, because when we tried to do a group meeting a few months ago, COVID got spread among the group. Someone who was asymptomatic had it. Everyone was wearing masks, but they were eating and drinking, so they would take their mask off, and because we provided food, and COVID spread, frankly. And I looked at that and I was horrified that happened, that we did that. So we're not doing that personal, we're not building these personal relationships, and families are still limiting the people in their home sometimes, right? So we don't have sometimes a therapist in there and a supervisor's doing the work remotely, because we're respecting the family, not wanting too many people in their home, because our kids are immune compromised. And so I know that as much as people want to say COVID is over, I still feel like it's this lingering thing. And
no, for sure. I mean, because I think even like, Dylan aged out on December 17th.
right.
But now, like all the places are still closed. If they're opening slowly. A lot are remote learning, but also if you weren't already in like a program, that's the kids that are adults that are getting back in. Like now there's this massive waiting list where, so people that, kids that are going to be aging out, like come this summer, like they're
Yeah.
in for a huge wake up call. And
Yeah.
we know a lot of people are in that
Yep.
position. You know, so it's just super stressful. I agree with you. I don't think it's just, sorry, compensation
Yeah.
either. It's more to, like I've talked to a few people that, you know, their hearts are totally in it. They do it for the right reason. They love working, you know, with our kiddos and stuff. I think a lot of times people also though don't feel, and I don't think it's the families, but are feeling like they're valued, like not feeling they're respected.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like they're just robots. Like, okay, here's all your casework load and just go and don't talk. I mean, I have where I think it's super weird too, depending on the service, even if it's behavior, but it's like behavior respite, they're not supposed to talk to me even though they're in my house.
That's
And
so
like,
strange.
what am I, if like, wouldn't it be smart for me to give heads up, like, hey, he hasn't slept, or he's edgy, and, you know, like red alert, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it too. But even, I mean, even like respite right now and stuff, like I just keep getting month to month from different agencies. We don't have any staff, like we can't cover these hours. We've let regional center know, but like, it just seems like it's only going to get worse. And I think it is for the COVID. And sometimes I feel like, are they just using now COVID as an excuse? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And the bottom line is it's hurting the families and the kids. And the
Oh
adults.
yeah. I think
I'm-
everybody I know is completely exhausted, you know?
Yep.
You know, it's exhausting.
And I don't know what to do. I honestly, I've never in my career thought I don't know what to do to protect my families and the kids we have that we care about. And I don't know what to do. What do I do, Jen?
I mean, I just say if you can just express that you care,
Yeah.
you know, and check in, you know, I think that's just really important, you know. I mean, I'm being serious. I don't think I think like I know I am, you know, realistic. I know the situation that we're in, and it's not like I expect miracles right now. But it means a lot when someone just checks in with you and says like, you know, I'm thinking about you and you're, you know, and Dylan, and you know, I'm trying to do what I can to make the situation better. I think just simple and sweet like that goes a long way. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point.
Though there are people that you're never going to please, so we got to remember that too.
I think that's a really good point. And I know I feel like my core team that I have, they're really good about that.
Yeah.
But as myself as a leader, they don't know me, but let me ask you as a parent, and you know, my title is senior vice president. If the senior vice president who you never met, but if they reached out to you and said something, would it matter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that would mean a lot to me. Yeah, I would say so.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that we've solved this issue. And we have so many families that are hurting right now over this, so many friends that we know. And so I guess some takeaways would be, one, for companies to just be honest with the families and have leadership reach out to them, which I'm now going to do. And the other one, I guess, would be to help families know that it's often these things are not their fault. It has nothing to do with them, although it might feel that way. And maybe prepare families that this is going to keep happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, separately, just for families or friends or people just in, you know, our groups, our world, our tribe. I think sometimes too, it might help the families or parents or whoever. I'm on some like Facebook groups, like one is like, my community and but this is gonna sound random, but I've been on a Foo Fighters like a private group for a very long time, many years. And when Taylor Hawkins just died suddenly, like it was a huge blow, like,
Yeah.
to especially I think our generation. And plus he was local. I've met him and stuff. So it sounds weird, but that group has really like, I mean, still did, it's been a while of it. I mean, just like nonstop on this thing. And it's like been a cool, like healing thing. And
Nice.
so I think maybe like if people have the opportunity to, whether it's, I don't know, autism group or whatever, or, warrior moms, like advocates, whatever it is. Sometimes like if you can get in groups like that, and I don't like ones that are like crazy and just vent, like, I like ones that focus on the positive, but like just bring up things or, and sometimes you can just ask questions and tips. So that's just another thing I suggest, because I know it's kind of helped me through, especially this COVID stuff and a lot of changes.
Great point. And that goes back to something we've always said, making sure our families have a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. All right, Jen. Well, we'll keep plugging along.
Yes.
And any other behavioral BCBA, ABA providers listening, if you're experiencing this challenge too, and you want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. And Jen and I also have a Facebook page. You can look us up on Facebook, and it is a place where you could ask us questions and give us more ideas. So we'll keep plugging along, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you.